Millions of people have hypothyroidism, and many of these people are also stricken with a condition known as chronic fatigue syndrome. Although the diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome is based on different criteria, this ultimately is a condition which involves weakening of the adrenal glands. Due to numerous factors, including poor eating habits, insufficient sleep, and dealing with chronic stress, the adrenal glands become compromised, which eventually can lead to this condition. How does someone develop chronic fatigue syndrome? Well, it's a process that usually takes a long time to occur, although it can sometimes be triggered by a traumatic event, either physical or emotional in nature, but most of the time it takes many years to develop. Let's look at an example of this. When someone eats a lot of refined foods and sugars, what happens is that this affects the hormones insulin and cortisol. When we eat such a food, it causes a spike in the blood sugar levels, and the pancreas releases insulin to bring these levels down. This in turn causes the adrenal glands to release cortisol in order to raise the blood sugar levels. What's important to understand is that the adrenal glands were designed to handle acute stress situations. But when a pattern like this occurs over a prolonged period of time, this will stress out the adrenals and eventually can lead to adrenal exhaustion, which is what's happening with someone who has chronic fatigue syndrome. The way that hypothyroidism is related to chronic fatigue syndrome is the following. When the adrenals become stressed out, it puts the body in a state of catabolism. This means that the body is breaking down. As you probably know, the thyroid gland controls the metabolism, and when the body is in a state of breaking down, the thyroid gland will try to slow down the metabolism as a protective mechanism. This slowing down of the thyroid gland is what in many cases will cause the development of a hypothyroid condition. But how about someone who has Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune hypothyroid condition? The reason why this is so common is because compromised adrenal glands will in turn affect immunity, which can lead to an autoimmune condition. This is why it is very important to fix any adrenal issues, as in addition to potentially causing chronic fatigue syndrome, it can also lead to the development of other conditions as well. This is why treating the malfunctioning thyroid gland in people with hypothyroidism usually is the wrong approach. The problem is that most endocrinologists and other medical doctors don't look for the cause of the problem. Instead, most simply look at the thyroid blood test, and if they are positive, these doctors almost always give the patient thyroid hormone to take for the rest of their life. Never is an attempt made to determine whether or not the person has an adrenal problem or any other issue which might be causing a hypothyroid condition. In order to cure both hypothyroidism and chronic fatigue syndrome, one needs to address the cause of these conditions, which in many cases is due to weakened adrenal glands. This isn't always the case with hypothyroidism, which is why it's a good idea to seek the advice of a competent natural endocrine doctor who will recommend certain tests to determine what is causing this condition. An adrenal stress index test is used to help diagnose an adrenal problem, as it measures the cortisol levels at different intervals throughout the day. The adrenal stress index test also consists of other tests which can be valuable as well. It takes time to correct an underlying adrenal problem. For example, if someone has been eating a lot of refined foods and sugars over a period of many years, they of course need to stop doing this and begin eating healthy foods. If the adrenal problems were due to an inability to deal with chronic stress, then they will need to improve their stress handling skills. So there is no quick cure, as changing certain lifestyle factors is essential in order to correct such a problem. Adrenal support is probably necessary as well. So in addition to eating well, taking certain nutritional supplements and herbs is usually necessary to completely restore one's health back to normal. Once again, rather than self-treat your condition, it is best to consult with a holistic doctor who has experience dealing with endocrine disorders such as hypothyroidism and chronic fatigue syndrome. Why are natural treatment methods so effective, and why don't most endocrinologists and medical doctors try to cure these conditions? To answer the first question, the reason why natural treatment methods are so effective is because they get to the underlying cause of the disorder rather than just try to cover up the symptoms through medication. Don't get me wrong, as sometimes medication is necessary, but to give everyone with hypothyroidism thyroid hormone based solely on their thyroid blood test is ludicrous. As for chronic fatigue syndrome, most endocrinologists and medical doctors don't know how to handle this condition. In the past, many doctors dismissed this condition, as many would not believe that these patients really had such a severe problem, and instead they came to the conclusion that it was all in their head. Fortunately, more and more doctors are beginning to realize that chronic fatigue syndrome is a true condition, although most still don't know how to treat it, as they just resort to symptom management. In summary, both hypothyroidism and chronic fatigue syndrome can be cured in many people. It's just important to know that there is no miracle cure for these conditions, as it does take time to accomplish this. And one needs to take responsibility for their own health in order to permanently cure such issues. But for those who are willing to make such a commitment, curing both hypothyroidism and chronic fatigue syndrome is a strong possibility. To receive more natural thyroid health tips, please visit naturalendocrinesolutions.com, where you can get a free guide entitled The 6 Steps on How Natural Thyroid Treatments Can Restore Your Health. This guide contains 100% pure content and is not a sales pitch for any product or service. Thanks for watching this presentation.